Hey, this is Casey Okupi with Free Speech Northwest, and I'm here with my lovely wife, Kimberly. And she had an idea for a topic to speak on today. What was that topic?
It is talking about the defunding or the underfunding of school districts and the removal of parents removing students from the school district and how that's affecting Oregon.
That's smart. Moving students, removing them from the school district, that's a good idea. So they are losing funding. You're saying that's in relation to the fact that a lot of kids are exiting the school district?
Well, the reason for this is there's been a lot of articles coming out about colleges stating that they can't complete certain projects they have, like opening of buildings, they're removing certain programs, and they're stating it's because they're not getting enough funding. And even the school district that we live in has announced that they will be removing, I think, 10 teachers, 35 staff, and this is due to the fact that they've lost 595 students. And we live in a pretty small town, and they said that's equivalent to a full school. A lot of that is about, parents such as us removing our kids from the school district and saying, you're not doing the job that we think you're being funded to do. But some of this is Oregon gaslighting, as the fact that they're not admitting that we have lost federal funding. And so they're putting it on to other reasons instead of stating, well, our governor's not complying, and this affects Oregon as a whole. This isn't just school districts as in young children. We're talking about colleges too. And one of the reasons to bring this up is because this doesn't just affect, it tends to be conservatives who are talking along the lines like we don't want our kids in school districts. But when you start having federal funding pulled, it affects everybody. And so a lot of programs have stopped, especially they're talking about pulling funding for even like grants and things along that lines. And they're stating that this just happens, just randomly happen, instead of our government factually not admitting that we have not complied with federal guidelines.
Federal guidelines. That's actually Executive Order 14201, and that's no federal money if boys compete in girls' sports, for example. Boys compete in girls' sports.
Yeah.
So basically, they're talking about identifying. They're saying the boys are saying I'm a girl and I want to compete against girls in girls' sports. That's not fair. And I think Trump doesn't think that's very fair. And so he put in that order.
Correct.
And our governor, Tina Kotek, said that boys should get to annihilate and destroy girls because of the biological differences between boys and girls. Boys are designed specific ways. Girls are designed specific ways. So when girls compete against girls, then it's like an even playing field.
Yeah.
And President Trump probably says to himself, maybe girls should be the only ones competing against girls because otherwise it'd be cheating. So I'm not going to give you federal money if you're going to have boys take all the awards, break the records, and that's only when they compete against girls. When boys are competing against boys, it's a little more competitive for them, right?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I bring up is we're kind of a sports-obsessed society, and I love sports myself. But eventually when you start hitting high school level, especially your senior year, sports, if you are exceptionally talented in them, become pretty important because college is expensive. And when I went to college, I tried for grants, I tried for scholarships, and they were just flat out not allowed. No matter what I did, I didn't qualify because of my ethnicity, or I didn't qualify because I was married, or there was a lot of things, or because I was older. I didn't go back to school and finish my degree until I was in my 30s. So I just simply didn't qualify. And there's going to be a lot of students that don't qualify. I don't think that, but Oregon doesn't come from a really highfalutin, society. We really don't have that. And so majority of the kids who are going to have to need some sort of scholarship to go to school are competing in sports, because sports tends to be where the government or like colleges look to fund. And so if you have individuals who consider themselves transgender entering in to female sports, you end up not just stripping that title of hard work, you end up stripping futures away on top of that. If we're talking about women's rights, I mean, I'll tell people right out, I'm not a feminist. I don't believe in a lot of the things that come along. But if you want to play devil's advocate, you can't have women's rights and then have a transgender who is just biologically built different, who gets to be stronger. Also now start stripping academic progress from students too. And that's never brought up. We actually had a student in the school district in ours where we live who was one of the top in our state lose that state title because she competed against a transgender student. And colleges watch that. And usually the people who are the top performers get the top scholarships to go to college. And college isn't a little deal. And that's something that's pretty profound. And I think I find it personal because I owe a lot of money in student loans. And student loans tend to be where people are like, well, you went to school, so you should have to pay that back. That's fair in many aspects. But what's not fair about that is the astronomical cost of college and the fact that majority of the stuff that we are actually paying for in college, other people get to go for free, and they're not getting to get to go for free. The people who are paying for their student loans are taking that burden. So when you see like people going to get college scholarships as a transgender, they've not only just then removed that sort of scholarship from a female athlete, it's then going to go on to the other individuals who maybe don't top perform in sports, but still want to have a future in some sort of, let's say teaching. There's employment you cannot have unless you are educated. One of that is almost every single state job. You need to at least have a bachelor's degree, unless magically you've developed experience, which usually that's going to take 10 to 15, maybe even 20 years to have that. You're one of those individuals that wasn't able to get a state job until you've had about 20 years of experience, and that's a long time. We have doctors. Doctors are required to have an education. And we're putting all these financial burdens on top of these people who are going to be civil servants. And that's one aspect I don't think people think about when it comes to student loans, is that one of the reasons it is so astronomically high is because we are paying for foreigners who get to go for free. That doesn't just happen. People just don't magically get things for free. Somebody's always taking the burden. And so now if we're going to take that into transgender rights, it means that now anyone who is a female who may be struggling but has an athletic talent and could actually go to college, it's another aspect of stripping that future away from that student. And I don't know if anything could be more demotivating of going, why should I even apply myself? Because if I'm going to be able to be the top sports athlete and have that, my future took. It isn't like I have a title took and I'm just a fast runner. You have a whole complete future took. And it's not something that anyone's talking about. And so when you have a governor go, we're not going to comply with that, it means each student there is also dealing with like, well, you're taking my future away. And this isn't a little thing. Maybe down the road this gets fixed. But we have kids in school currently competing to be able to have a future.
Yeah.
But we also don't discuss the other aspect of us having women and guys sports. Like, that's something that became very common, and I don't feel we even discuss those sort of things either. And I don't want this to become a sports topic because this is about education, and education is more than just sports. But I do feel like guys also have the right to compete in football and things along that line stripped from because we have females out there. On my son's football team, there is easily guys who are 6'4", over 300 pounds, and I knew some girls in there probably like my height, 5'2", 100 pounds. How on earth is a girl supposed to compete against that? It's dangerous. And we have removed, what we have did as a society is stripped everything, like our private spaces, I guess I would state. And you start stripping away the aspect of those people.
So like, also the guys' private spaces and their spaces are getting stripped away as well.
Well, we never discuss that. We really don't. It's like, and I think that's a conservative problem. I really do. I think there's a lot of hypocrisy in the way that conservatives. We don't want guys and girls sports. But girls should be over their wrestling, and they should be in football, and they'll all be going, well, they don't compete against the women. But that's not true. They are doing practices, and I've had a girl who actually had her shoulder dislocated. And there's just friendly, practice and things.
Well, there's another part of that is it seems like there's a lot of broken families and things, and this is a way for a lot of young girls to get more attention from their fathers.
Yeah.
Like to compete in the guy sports. It's like, I want to be noticed by my dad because he's paying attention to my brothers who are playing football, so I'm going to play football. I'm going to do these guy sports, right? Is that something that you think happens?
Well, I think it's really, to tell you the truth, I think that some of that is the fact that fathers are trying to go, not trying, so that's a bad word. They're being back in the families, which is perfect. But some of the things is, and I recognize that in my own family. I remember talking with my dad one time going like, you always allowed me to do everything. It's like I was always with you. And my parents are divorced. My mom lived in South Dakota while I was out here. And he'd be like, well, I just raised you like a guy. He goes, I didn't know any other way. And it really made an impact on me of going, I think one of the issues here is that we're kind of trying to turn everyone into guys. And it's all just befuddled out there. And it really is. Like, I don't know anyone who is telling their daughters to be wives and mothers or,
well, when it comes
be
to
more
sports,
feminine.
We're trying to turn guys into girls.
It is.
And, we're not really, there's all these different levels to really unpack because you have made a lot of points in a short amount of time.
And I always will. That's a problem with me. So,
and, we're really not celebrating how well biological guys do in girls' sports.
We really aren't. And I don't want this to make this about an education thing, so I'd like to finish the sports aspect. But I think that's one of the things is that if you're stripping, it's already hard enough to just be an individual on your own. And I think anybody who ever discusses any of this have no problem at all of a transgender sports league. And if that's something that they would start looking into, I don't know a person that wouldn't go, that's actually perfect, and we have no problem with it. And to separate things out, because in all actuality, that would be a fair playing field, quite literally. And that is what sports are supposed to be.
Sure.
Is you are
fair and confusing.
Well, no, I don't think it's confusing, and I don't think I have a problem with that. And I think we like to get sarcastic, but
I do,
yeah, you do. But like let's just take it as an example in track. If you're running 100 meters, you run up against individuals who have the same time as you, in the same sort of realm. But you can't have that if a talented trans athlete is competing. There isn't their realm because it doesn't exist in the female because they're always going to be faster than us. It's just biological and height half the time. But some of this is going, if you guys want these things, then you have to start making it where it is factually equal. It is where women compete against women, trans against trans, and men against men. And anyone who starts arguing those sort of things, it eventually, I think that's not a logical aspect. They're getting their feelings pulled inside of that.
So you're saying the bottom line, we should have like XX versus XY, and you can call yourself whatever you want.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that is really where we are the United States, and we are supposed to be allowed to have some of these freedoms. The problem is your freedom stops when you start impeding on someone else's. And we need to put the boundaries back up. I don't have a problem with anyone being transgender. That is literally their freedom of choice, and we should celebrate that because there is Christian views, but then we're Americans, and Americans did always allow that sort of freedom. But they have to be willing to compete where it's logical. I'm not going to go race a kindergartner and then act like I'm some big tough person because I'm faster than him.
Well, I think the point is that you should race the kindergartner, and then we should celebrate your victory in the kindergartner's face.
Yeah, well,
you totally destroyed that kindergartner. What a loser.
Yeah. Well, I know you and I will always kind of butt heads on things along those lines, but one of the things beyond that also is that, now I want to transition to some of the education aspects of it, is that we did start pulling kids out of our school district. Oregon's had an almost 30% decrease of student population, and that's not something you see in the headlines. And that was a factual choice that they have made, that parents have made. And I actually know a lot of single parents and that who have did the same thing. And a lot of it isn't necessarily just homeschooling. We're kind of in the middle of a revolution, in my personal opinion. And when you have a revolution, something falls every time because you're trying to get rid of the old. For one school district of about I would say 25,000 population town to lose 595 students, it's funny to me that the schools don't go, oh, what's wrong?
Yeah, that's a statement
It is.
That's saying
it's a
that
silent protest.
We hate you, school.
We do hate you, schools.
Yes.
Yes. And yet at no time did the school districts, or, even parents will come in and tell them. It's a stubbornness that is very...
emboldened, arrogant.
Well, it's a stubbornness of, not understand that everything does move forward. And you do have to be willing to get rid of the old to figure out what's going on. And we've tried a lot of things the past 10 years, and the school districts have absolutely collapsed. And I'm not going to act like... I think sometimes people think we come in here and we just run our mouths, but you've worked the school districts for years, and
That's
so have
right.
I.
I've spent at least 6 years in the Salem Kaiser School District.
In behavioral.
Until I couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been, since our son was I started in 2008 in the school district, and I've also, I've been a head preschool teacher. I've worked behavioral, and I currently am a substitute teacher, which I've been for 10 years, in variety. And I've seen a lot of school districts, a lot of classrooms, and it's very apparent how it has started to collapse. And that is the only word for it, is one of the reasons that this is a problem is the school districts are collapsing, period. And because the teachers are worn out, the students are out of control, and
the schools are not given tools to be able to help the children behave. Like, the teachers are not given tools, they're not taught tools, they're not given the ability to enforce any kind of behavioral modification, like a timeout or something. In fact, they're being told that it's culturally insensitive, often to actually correct behavior.
Well, one of the issues is that we've all sit into a classroom, and when they decided to integrate all students together, I don't feel that was a bad thing. I think some classes, definitely that could have been a good aspect to be around everybody.
Can you describe what you mean by that?
So they took anyone who had special needs, behavioral needs, educational needs. If you're severely
so integration means you need extra tools and things to...
Yes, they have behavioral issues, I suppose.
Sure.
To me, what I would see more likely is one thing that Oregon did do really well is that if you were having an educational struggle, they do really well stepping in and having special classrooms for that sort of thing. We have LRCs, and then we have pullouts in classrooms. And it's a really nice break because the kids who tend to struggle get pulled from class and you get to teach standardly. But one of the things that they took away is any of the children who have factual severe behavioral issues, which tends to be outbursts, refusal to work, and just flat out some emotional things that actually distract a full classroom.
Yeah.
They have allowed that back in. Yes.
And because this was a child that had fetal alcohol syndrome,
yeah,
and all these different things that cause a kid to get very emotionally unable to handle a standard classroom. They're integrating kids that can't necessarily handle sitting there in a normal classroom environment and doing their work because it overwhelms them or it doesn't stimulate them enough. They're having those kids in the room with all the other kids that can actually complete their assignments, you're saying.
Yeah. And so when you have really good students, they sit there attempting really hard. You always have those kids that sit there I want to learn, look at me, I'm behaving. They tend to be ignored. But what we started to do instead of going, these kids have behavioral issues, what do? We went to ADHD medications, psychotropic medications. Not that there isn't kids who factually need those sort of things.
Absolutely.
But it's a blanket response now.
Yeah.
I've certainly worked with kids you know what, I know for a fact that you have some sort of thing that does need treatment, and it shouldn't be treated in the school districts. And we've allowed teachers to step in and go, well, this child has ADHD. Teachers are not doctors. And the first time we actually had that with our own son.
That's right.
And we'll admit that our son had speech development issues, but it was solved eventually. And one of the reasons they found out is that he was having trouble in classrooms remembering, and they called it ADHD, is that he has short-term memory issues that he still works on today. And the way that we solved it was really simple, is he had to have a list wrote down. But we had a teacher come and sit with us and go, he has ADHD. And we're like, no, he doesn't. And I think my father, being a child psychologist, was a savior of that, because he goes, no, he doesn't. He'll sit there and do projects for hours. He goes, you're probably just bored in school.
Yeah.
But
Matt Walsh has been talking about how the people who had diagnose the concept of ADHD are coming out and going, they're bored. It's boredom, actually. We were mistaken.
Yeah.
Kids get bored. And as a parent, when you understand that, like you and I, we understand that not all kids have ADHD. Just gives you that Will Smith kind of moment feeling, you know what I mean? Where it's like...
Not even slightly. No, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, it's upsetting. It's enraging.
Well, now I'm curious about Will Smith. What on earth are you talking about? Are we smacking people? Because that's what I think
smacking.
of.
Like, it makes you so mad when somebody says your kid has ADHD and they don't know what they're talking about because they're a teacher and they're not a clinical psychologist.
Yeah.
And it's these people who are unqualified telling you these things, and I just want to say, get my kid's name out your mouth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple, in my opinion, some issues there. Is one of the things is we have lost as a society that maybe children should learn to sit down and be quiet and listen and be told no. We've
You're saying kids should be told no?
Oh, most of the time. Almost all the time they should be told no,
That's
sit
so
down,
mean.
behave. And kids, just like you have to learn math, just like you have to learn reading, you have to learn focus, and it takes time. And you have to learn behavioral control. And most people are not teaching their kids those things anymore. You will see a stark difference in kids who go to church than kids who don't, because they have to sit there for an hour and behave. And that is because they've been told, you have to do this. You're going to sit here at this time, and you're going to sit, you're going to behave, you're going to be quiet, but at the end, you can go play. And that's something that you learn over time, and it has to be taught. And you can see that in adults now, that because we've reached a generation where these kind of been at practice, and you'll see these kids in high school who cannot control themselves, who are always poking at each other or, laying on the floor. And I'm talking high schoolers. And that is because somewhere along the lines, a parent thought they shouldn't have fixed that. And that is parenting. Some of the stuff that's going on in the school district is flat out parenting. And I'm not saying that all teachers or that teachers shouldn't be allowed to observe things that's going on with your student, and you should have that conversation, but they're not allowed to diagnose. But one of the things is when we worked with the school districts, kids with a lot of emotional issues who are very distracting in class not only had their own classroom, they had a one-on-one that worked with them. And a lot of those times, those one-on-ones followed them through high school. And it was really good for schools to have that, and it was good for kids. And that allowed a student to develop an attachment to an adult that was always there. And that was important because it provided some safety to some children who just don't have that. But our districts just started stripping that. Oregon, for about, I would say, since we lost Kid Hopper, I know a lot of people didn't like him, but that's probably the last time I would say that Oregon felt slightly normal. But when we got like Brown in there, it just like, you don't even get to pay it. Like they do it so sneakily. They just keep removing funds and then wonder why society starts to fall.
Pushing through laws that you don't even vote for.
Oh, constantly.
Yeah.
Like right now they're pushing a law that says like if your kid is constantly tardy or absent, you will be fined, because they're always looking for a money grab. And we want to have these blanket statements of going, you're going to be drugged because you're hyper, or you're going to be fined. But it isn't solving any problems. And because that is like, I wouldn't even put like 0.5% of what we're dealing with in the school districts as a problem. And so when you decide, I think our generation, and especially the next generation, is discussing like the last generations did it wrong. I actually believe that the hippie generation is the reason we're in such a downfall of a society, because they really started removing the morals, and they started thinking that broken families are fine. They started saying things along like, oh, your kids will be fine if you get divorced.
A lot of self stuff.
Self. Yeah, I don't need a man. And I think our generation is starting to go, you know what, if we look at that and look at how broken we are, and I think that's where we became people going, we're going to fix some stuff, and we're going to do it as bad as we can, but make it be solid as we can. It's like, not as bad, but it's like, we don't care if we're doing it badly because we didn't have a model for things. And we're all opening up going, what is going on? And we look at the school districts going, you're teaching weird crap that doesn't make sense. Half the time when I talk to my son, so our son is half time in some of the electives, I'll go, what'd you do today? And he'll go, I didn't do anything. We just sat there. We stapled paper. I'm like, why should they be funded if that's what they're doing? My son literally said yesterday they licked envelopes and put it in there because they're going to hand out stuff for his marketing class. Why would I pay you for that? Of course he's going to come home and do actual work.
Yeah, he would get more out of starting his own entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
his own business, and starting marketing.
Yeah.
And that's what they should be doing in these classes. Every child should be, you should force them to create their own business somehow or something. But they don't do anything.
And you can't check in on that because everything's online. They don't send papers home anymore. And if I would ask people to start really checking in with your students. Don't let them go, nothing. What did you do today? And you need to evaluate that based on the grade that they're in. And something should be happening in those classes. And since our generation's going, no, we know what we went to school with. We know how it is now. We see society falling apart. Yeah, you don't get our kids anymore. And so Oregon has did a whole revolution of homeschooling. In fact, homeschools are trying to make it where now the states cannot check in on their academic progress because they feel that you're not passing academic progress. Why should you be judging us? And that's completely accurate. Who is the state to tell us anything? We're in the bottom 40.
If you're a taxpayer in Oregon, you should be ashamed and embarrassed by how we are academically. And you should call out anybody in leadership who's passing these insane academic agendas where, you don't hold anyone accountable for anything and you're teaching all kinds of weird, stuff instead of academic things like having standards when it comes to mathematics and reading and all these different things and holding people to standards, holding everyone to standards.
Well, we actually have the highest standards for teachers that we've ever had in Oregon, and they are overwhelmed while having literally none for students. And it's pretty weird. Teachers are really overtaxed on the things that they have to do. A majority of the time, it's not even teaching. But what I've, kind of like in the personal training world, we used to always say, like, never take a session from a fat trainer because they don't know what they're doing. So it's the same thing. Like, these people are not educating, and they can't meet standards. Washington's at number 9. Why are we in the bottom 10? That doesn't make any sense. And the majority of that is because if you get onto state standards, Common Core, whatever it's called, like transgenderism has actually been woven into every single thing. You can get on to the Oregon State website and look at the standards and realize that in every single thing from math, that they're not worried about the outcome of individuals. And the most ironicness about that is it doesn't matter if you have immigrants in there. It doesn't matter if you have transgender. Your population, if you're putting that in there, everybody's leaving uneducated. Nobody is educated.
And, it's really not based in facts or science, so that makes it kind of a religion. And if you're not going to want religion in schools or state and religion separated, you probably shouldn't put this LGBTQ plus IA blah, 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 because that's all a sex religion.
Yeah, but it's also wearing on everybody. I mean, if you're going to put stuff in there, eventually you can overdo it where everyone starts to tune out. And that's where we are in positions of going, we got it. It's like we learned it. It's like trying to teach someone 2 + 2 forever. We got it. We understand where you stand on things. Is there any way we can have any other subject, like actually have a subject? Can we actually have math? Can we actually have English? Can we have writing? And the problem with some of this is they are removing some of the most fabulous teachers you will ever meet. I can't believe some of the people that I've seen walk away from the school district or just be totally burnt down and shut down when there's fabulous teachers in Oregon. There's people who really did care, and there's a lot of people coming into the school districts passionate. And I have a lot of student teachers who already are saying, I don't think I can do this. I'm so terrified that I went and did this education. I meet that all the time. But one of the things that I think is a huge issue in our school districts, and I think it's a problem everywhere, is that I don't see men there anymore at all. I've seen so many male principals leave. I don't see male teachers anymore. I do see some random male behavioral assistants, but that's a terrifying thing to actually have men start leaving and that women start taking over. And I think that's actually a symptom of sickness, that men don't feel like they can be participating in these sort of realms. And if we don't feel like men can be in the school districts, it does start being where I bet if we did some of the demographic, majority of the people being pulled out of school districts are boys.
Yeah.
I bet it's white boys, because I'd like to throw out, because it's been in my mind, is majority of the people don't realize if you do some sort of demographic on ADHD medication, it is highly biased towards white males, and almost 70% of them by the time of high school actually are on some sort of ADHD medication. And I can tell you, you can go walk into a high school and you can tell who's on ADHD medication, and it'll be some boy who didn't reach 5'8", thin, and still looks like they're in middle school. Because, I mean, not that I want to go down this realm, but it actually stunts growth. It stunts everything. It stunts puberty. It was the original form of puberty
development.
It really does. And I think that a lot of people started realizing that, and I have not did the research, but if someone did do the research, that majority of the people being pulled out of school districts, I would highly bet it's white males. And they should. You flat out should. You should not have those guys in there at all. It is bias. It is, they underplay.
It's like the soft bigotry of low expectations, because if a child who is fidgeting around in their seat and all this other stuff, if they're white or something, they'll say, oh, this kid's got ADHD. And I've heard teachers factually in West Salem tell me that. They're like, oh, they're so annoying. And then if they're not white and they're fidgeting around, you're here in the school district, it's cultural.
Yeah, it's true.
It's cultural. It's okay.
It is cultural. It's male culture.
Yeah, all of it.
And it just starts being a little too messed up about things. And so when you have a governor who wants to ignore, I would say so much, and start wondering why, the schools are collapsing. She's removed funding from the school district to fund homelessness, and that hasn't improved really at all.
Also, if you fund something, you're encouraging it.
It is true. It is complying. It is complying. If you don't like what's going on with something, it is like a silent boycott, but it's also a protection of your own children. One of the things that I've been paying attention in the news lately is how many teachers are having sexual relationships with children, and lately it's women. And it's disgusting.
Women in the schools.
Like, they had the one girl.
That's why men should be the primary figures in the school district.
To an extent, yeah. And I'm not saying that men haven't had these issues, but it's been all over this, and no one wants to discuss it, that is actually a big deal of women. There came something in our culture where thinking that if you're over 30, being with someone who's 20 and so much younger than you was like this cool thing. I think it's like a mental crisis that if you're looking at someone young, even if you're like 50, looking at a 20-year-old thinking that's cool, there's some mental issues with you. Because I don't know how, my son is 6 foot, he has 6'4" friends, and they're huge kids, but I just see these baby faces, these little kids, and I don't know what's going on with these women who hang out with these kids. And it's disgusting. And I think some of it is because we have made our school districts so sexual. We do talk about it too much. And we haven't separated out you should feel like an adult in there. And we're trying to relate to kids too much. We're trying to come down to their level too much, bring them up to our level. And there's been a lot of mental psychosis, in my personal opinion, entering in due to the fact that we've had all these weird curriculums in the school district.
Yeah, like you're actually telling teachers who are primarily female to talk about detailed sexual exploits with teenage kids and experimentation. It's like you're going to get them going, and you're all going to get going, and it's going to get...
I'm already done with this conversation.
Right? Yeah,
but,
it's stupid.
And that could be one of the reasons that men have left, too. They can't be put in that situation because they understand it's a danger.
Yeah. They're instantly, have to stress out and be full of anxiety because they're talking about something they're being told to talk about.
As a parent, if I was in your guys' position and you're worried about your kids and you want them in a school district, one aspect I would put in there is that you can do subbing. And that's something that I did. And I think, to me, when I entered into subbing, it was one of the most eye-awakening things I've ever did. I did get my education, but when I went to go apply to every single district, I sat in a mass interview and I sat in a mass training. There was not one time that anyone sat down and had an actual conversation with me subbing. And that's as a teacher sub. And I was given a badge, and I was allowed to go into any district I wanted. Sometimes you had to do a little bit of applying to the districts. But as a At classified, you can do the same process and walk into any school you want. And I'm never ID'd. I've never had a principal sit down and talk to me. I'm just put into a classroom. I've had one-on-one time with children. And I think that if that isn't one of the most telling things of how much they want to protect our children is random people get to just walk in and say, I'm going to educate your kid today. But it's also...
They don't do interviews.
Not at all. Not at all.
No. And that's with IAs, too, like instructional assistants. Like if you're a teacher's aide or whatever, to be a substitute teacher's aide, you are not interviewed at all. You can have all kinds of emotional disorders and not have the capacity.
They put you with some of the hardest kids, too, that probably should have a professional, someone that knows them with them.
Yeah, like you can be an instructional assistant in an emotional growth classroom and not even have the capacity as an adult human being to communicate with people on a social level.
Yeah, and I'll go all day with, I'll go all day with never have a principal or someone walk in there. But I also think that's a tool. Like if you're a parent and you're probably a stay-at-home mom or something along that lines, or you can go apply for that and check in on these districts and see how things go. I really do feel like if you want to move into a district and you're worried about putting your kid into a school, go apply for those jobs because you can just be that. It's not like you have to work every day. I work like I'm lucky, or not lucky, but I don't work maybe once or twice a month, if that. And you can go in and see what these districts are like. But I think that that's a really good sign in itself going, they're not protecting your kids because anybody can walk in there. Anybody.
Should be ashamed of themselves. Also, parents, mothers, and fathers, standardly, as a taxpayer, and having a kid in the school district, you should volunteer to help out.
I will say that has actually become something that they have blocked, too, though. I dare you to walk in as a parent and ask to go visit that classroom during the middle of the day. They're like, no, it's a safety issue. You almost aren't allowed anymore.
But you can apply to volunteer, right?
Volunteers, some of that has came back after COVID, but they collapsed all of that down during COVID, and a lot of it hasn't came back. And I think that that's a problem. Some of the districts I've seen do grandparent programs, which I love, where grandparents go in and read, older individuals.
Sure.
But some of the things with COVID, they shut things down, and then they didn't allow anyone back in. And, you behave better if someone's checking in on you. You really do. You do your job if someone's, your boss, you don't know when your boss is going to pop in and things along that lines. But just so you know, if anyone ever out there wants to go, like I know lots of women whose kids are in the school district and they sub so they can be with their kids. And a lot of times they get hired out. So... But they're not protecting your kids, and they're not educating your kids.
They're doing the opposite.
Your kids probably come home. Another thing is you're probably having emotional problems at home, not understanding what's going on. And now they're going to be telling you, well, this is all your guys' fault. You removed your kids from here. But it's like that's kind of the theme of Oregon, in my opinion, is like we've lost federal funds, and no one's supposed to ever go, what is going on and why is it? And the government's never going to do this for you. And it's funny to me, is one of the reasons I wanted to do the show is I don't think anyone looks at Oregon anymore.
No, where's Holman?
Yeah, no kidding. But more than that, it's like I think even conservatives tend to be the worst people about this, is that we keep relying on the government to do our job. And I think the school districts in Oregon are going, with the parents, we're like, we're going to do this job then. You're not going to. So we're opening charter schools. We open up homeschool groups and co-ops, and I'm going to homeschool my kid, and I'm going to be there for him. And that should be how we do everything. I don't think we have to pay attention to our government as much as we used to, and that's a bipartisan thing, in my opinion. It's like we are collapsing. We have business after business after business collapsing. We have our school districts collapsing. No one can drive in our roads.
No. Not if you want to keep your suspension.
No.
You're going to break your tires.
But no one is going. We did this, like, I removed my son. I will admit, he's there part-time. But that is because our kid had been in the school district majority of his years, and we did want him to maintain some of the friends. But he's there. He's home by noon.
School for
he was.
Years.
That's
he was
true.
Not in regular school.
And we need more Christian schools to actually go through high school. But it's difficult because those are insanely expensive. Most schools are insanely expensive.
We need vouchers.
But we need to stop relying. And I think that's one of the themes that came from Oregon is going, we have to quit relying on anything. Maybe we need vouchers, but what we need is our tax money back. That should be an option.
Like,
it shouldn't be where, if your schools,
we pay tons. Like each student is over $10,000 a year.
Yeah.
$10,000. So if you have a kid and you are paying taxes your money should follow your kid, not the school district you're in.
See, I don't think I believe that. I believe in our taxes. We should say that if you homeschool or you do a charter school and you pay, you should be able to opt out of that tax. It isn't as big a deal as the $10,000 because that's burdening everybody here. But you should have an opt-out going, I don't have my kid in this district.
So you don't pay the tax.
You don't pay the tax. And because that's a message you want to send. And that's actually the message Trump said. It's like, you're not listening to the people. And Oregon's not listening either. If you go and look at if we look at our electoral map, it was mostly red. And I don't think people are huge fans of Trump all the time, but we are huge fans of going, I'm tired of you in my life. I'm tired of you controlling this.
I'm tired of you putting people in danger.
Putting people in danger and collapsing and things along that lines. And I think the school districts and the lack of funding is really, it's like the frog in the hot water and no one's paying attention. We're boiling alive. And it's the citizens' job to go out and do that. And even if it's the silent protest of going, you don't get to have my kid. The only reason our son is in any classes is he takes woods, he takes lifting, he takes a lot of classes that I feel are man classes that might help him later on, like mechanics and things. But he's home by noon. And then it's my turn. And we have to stop reading these headlines and going, well, that's weird that we lost funding. Because they're not even mentioning. Oregon is like this silent person in the back room. We have Maine being suing, Maine's out there mouthing off, and Washington's mouthing off, and everyone's tired of Newsom. But she plays really wise by being kind of like that gray man in the back while causing a huge calamity. And every time you read a headline going, well, this community college will not be building because we don't have the funding, what they're screaming is our governor didn't comply and is collapsing our education system on every level. And I think we forget that we support that. That's the point. We want Trump to do that because as an individual parent, I participated in that. I did. I have to pay for majority of the electives that my son takes. So, and he's not in any of the other classes, and I won't. And he only takes classes from very specific teachers, too, that I know and I approve of. And we're being gaslit. We're being lied to, and it's time for us to go, you know what, we can privately protest this, and you should.
Yeah, or you could do what I do, and I like to scream from the rooftops that I'm very angry.
Yes.
And shame on you, they, them government, who is destroying everything. And with that, we should probably wrap up, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, Free Speech Northwest radio show signing out.
See you later.
That's it.